Committee on Commerce and Consumer Protection, Finance, and Policy to order. Today is Monday, February 28th, 2022. It's at about 1:03. Today's agenda, we will have Senate File 3472 by Senator Dahms. Senator Dahms, if you'd like to introduce your bill, and please testify.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Today we have Senate File 3472, which is the Senate that portion of it. Today, not only are we going to be moving the bill to continue reinsurance, but also this bill will also give the final authority to the Department of Commerce to continue with the 1332 waiver. And the Department of Commerce did turn in the 1332 waiver on time back in December, and that has come back with some further requests. One of those requests is that we have a more definite showing by the Minnesota legislator and the governor's office that we plan on moving forward with reinsurance. So that's part of what will be here today. Most of you have heard the reinsurance bill probably several times in the past. For those that are new, what this bill does is it reenacts the reinsurance as we've had it in the past. And in the past, our reinsurance has been a program to where the insurance companies pay the claims up to $50,000, and then the reinsurance steps in and pays claims through $250,000. And in that area between the 50 and the 250, up until last year, the reinsurance paid 80% of those claims. The insurance companies paid 20% of those claims. And then when the 250 blinked off, then the insurance companies were back paying the full percentage of the claim. Last year, in the final negotiations, money was taken out of the premium security account. And so with that money taken out, we had to reduce the percentage that the insurance companies, or we had to change the percentage that the reinsurance paid and reduce the amount they paid from 80% to 60%, which you probably remember some of the phone calls you got by the way the premium was driven up, and that's an actuarial decision. And I want folks to keep in mind the old adage that all we're doing is giving money to the insurance companies. I just as soon address that right now, stating that in the state of Minnesota, there are several rules and requirements that insurance companies have to follow. So this is one very efficient way to do it. It's worked very well. In fact, it's been much more successful than what it was ever thought to be. And Minnesota was one of the first, I believe it was the second state that enacted reinsurance back in 2017, starting in the 2018 year. And 14 states reenacted it after that. And as I understand, there's another state that is in the midst of doing it, and several other states have applied for waivers. So it is a very strongly supported piece of reinsurance, piece of our health insurance puzzle. And many of the congressional folks and the Minnesota senators at the federal level have endorsed and do support the reinsurance program. And so with that said, I'll just go into a little bit of it. The purview of the Commerce Committee is to basically deal with the with the dollars and the payment of this process. So I just wanted to get into those. Just to give you a heads up, we have applied for a fiscal note. We applied for that some time ago. However, we have not received that fiscal note. The fiscal note did get pretty much completed on Friday, and there was some issues that had to be addressed, and there was some issues that they weren't certain if those numbers were right and stuff, so that is being taken a look at. So we have not received a fiscal note, but we've got some pretty close numbers as to what's going on that. And so what we would be looking at is we would be looking at a 2080 for as the co-insurance. We would be looking at a turning on at 50,000, turning off at 250,000. We are looking at roughly a cost for 2 years of around $323 million, and that would be a 2-year cost, and that would be with taking the current $81 million that's currently in the premium security account. that would be using that $81 million to pay forward on these 2 years. It would also include the 8.6, that's $8.676 million that we lose because when reinsurance drives down the premium, the tax on the premium goes down. And that interaction over a 2-year period is about $8.67 million. That is also included in this bill. Then when we apply for the waiver, it's a hold harmless waiver, and there's 2 parts to that 1332 waiver. And one of the, I was just told a fiscal note came in since we've gavelled in, so we won't be using that today because we have not had a chance to look at that. And so we'll use the information we have today. And then we will make sure that we'll have an amendment going into Health and Human Services into that bill. We'll have an amendment to adopt the fiscal note and take a look at those and use those numbers. And apparently they're going to be pretty close to what we have. But so the, I got to remember where I was at here. On the cost. So then there's 2 parts to that waiver. And the governor assumes, his assumption on his budget assumes that waiver will receive the second part, which we did not receive in full in the previous 5-year waiver. But it is a hold harmless waiver, and so we should be receiving both pieces of that. The one piece we'll be receiving about $77 million. That's the projected amount that we'll receive from that. And that one's the one that we've been getting. The other piece, we're assuming the cost will be about $53.4 million that will be shortchanged to the BHP over the next 2 years. So that is also included in the $323 million. That's pretty much a scope of how that works. Mr. Chair, I would suggest that we go to the testifiers, and then after the testifiers testify, then open it up for questions.
Thank you, Chair Dahms. I believe that's where we're going to go. The first testifier on the list is Mr. Peter Brickety from the Minnesota Department of Commerce. Please, when you get to the testifier stand, please state your name and your department for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Mr. Chair, thank you. For the record, Peter Brickety, Assistant Commissioner at the Commerce Department. Good to be back with you. The department appreciates that the Senate is taking swift action to begin moving this proposal through the legislative process. Members are aware, as Senator Dahms stated, that the governor's budget does contain a continuation of the reinsurance program, and the department stands ready to work with the legislature to successfully extend this program this session. As you know, in late December, and as Senator Dahms referenced, Commerce, as directed by the legislature last year, submitted the state's initial 1332 waiver continuation request. And as expected, federal regulators replied indicating that the state's waiver application was incomplete. Those federal partners invited the state to update its submission and resubmit. In order for the state's 1332 waiver to be extended, the state must demonstrate, as Senator Dahms was saying earlier, the reinsurance program has been authorized to operate in at least 2023, and that the state can pay for its expected share of the program's expenses. To allow enough time for the state's 1332 waiver continuation request to be reviewed and approved before state law requires final rates to be made public on or about October 1st, we need at least legislative authorization for the program to exist in 2023 by April 1st. This timeline tracks with the one on which we successfully created the reinsurance program originally. Back in 2017, the enabling legislation became law on April 4th, and the state received word that it's from federal regulators that the program could operate on September 22nd. Mr. Chair, I will note that the Senate's proposed mechanism for paying for the program differs from that, from the one that is included in the governor's budget in an important way. The department believes that the assessment model contained in the governor's budget will be a more stable, long-term way to pay for the program. The assessment protects state taxpayers from the growing costs of the program while still affording them the benefits of the stability that it provides to the individual market. The assessment model, which is already employed successfully in 2 of those other states that have programs, Maryland and our neighbors in North Dakota, is not a novel concept and is based on the assessment used to fund MSHA when it was the state's high-risk pool, in its earlier incarnation. And Commerce urges the legislature to seriously consider the assessment model as the bill moves forward. One other important consideration, and I appreciate that Senator Dahms addressed much of this in his opening remarks, is the bill's impact or the program's impact on other programs within the state. MNsure has operational impacts that the governor's budget pays for that result from the existence of the reinsurance program. And as Senator Dahms was saying earlier, that Minnesota Care funding is also negatively impacted due to the previous federal administration's decision to not approve our original 1332 waiver in full. We remain hopeful that the current administration or Congress may remedy this issue and soon, but at the time it is a cost impact that we do need to consider. I'll close by saying that department staff are already working to update the agency's fiscal note, which we have done to reflect the February forecast numbers that were released earlier today. So we'll have that up and ready, Senator, for your hearing on Wednesday in Senator Aki's committee. And Mr. Chair, with that, thanks for the opportunity to speak and happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't see any questions, and I think if you'd be available to stick around.
I'll be right across the way, Senator.
Sounds good. Thank you. And with that, the next testifier would be Mr. Brentley Graves from the Chamber of Commerce. Please take your seat at this testifier's table, state your name and your organization for the record, and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. My name is Brentley Graves. I'm with the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, and we represent more than 6,000 employers all across the state in every industry of the state and every corner of the state, and through that represent about 500,000 employees. We at the Chamber work on healthcare issues because it's an increasingly important benefit for our members, both in terms of keeping their employees healthy and productive at work, but also in terms of attracting and retaining talent in what is becoming an increasingly competitive labor market. Now, some wonder what interest the business community has in a stability mechanism for the individual market. First and foremost, though, I'd note that the individual market is where entrepreneurs go for coverage for themselves and their families. But it's also becoming an important outlet for very small employers for themselves and their employees. This is especially true now given the allowance made in recent years by the federal government for employers to work with their employees through essentially defined contribution arrangements where the employer can give their employees money to go buy their own individual insurance. To underscore this point, in a survey of our members this last year, already 6% of our members said that they were using these defined contribution models to provide coverage for their employees. Similarly, 1 in 10 of our members who currently offer coverage said that they would likely be turning to models like these defined contribution arrangements if and as healthcare costs continue to rise at the unsustainable rate that they're on. Similarly, nearly 30% of those members of ours who aren't currently offering coverage indicated that they would be looking at arrangements like this in the future to ensure the coverage options for their employees. So these kinds of emerging trends, we believe, lend all the more reason for moving legislation to continue reinsurance in Minnesota. Because as was stated earlier, we know that reinsurance works. It has done exactly what it was intended to do here in Minnesota, and that is to lower rates anywhere from 20 to over 30%, depending on the metal level of the product you choose in the individual market. And it's brought significantly increased stability to the individual market in Minnesota. So we want to thank Senator Dahms for the work he's done, not just this session so far bringing this forward, but in the years preceding to ensure reinsurance has been in place. And this committee for the work and the commitment it's made to this program over the years. We stand ready to help move this program forward this session, and I'm happy to stand for any questions you may have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Graves, and if you can, thank you for your testimony. And next up, we'll have Mr. John Reynolds from the National Federation of Independent Businesses. If you can please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Howe. My name is John Reynolds. I'm the State Director for the National Federation of Independent Businesses in Minnesota. We're the state's largest small business organization with over 10,000 members in every corner of Minnesota. 75% of our members have 10 or fewer employees. First, I want to thank Chair Dahms for carrying Senate File 3472, which would continue Minnesota's highly successful reinsurance program. As Mr. Graves noted, the individual market is important to Minnesota's small business community and is the source of coverage for many small employers, their employees, and self-employed entrepreneurs. Instability and rising premiums in the individual market are bad for small business, as we witnessed from 2014 through 2017. Fortunately, beginning in 2018, the reinsurance program reversed the years-long trend of double-digit increases for individual market enrollees. It also halted a half-decade-long drop in the number of policyholders, which further stabilized the market. According to a September 2021 review of Minnesota's reinsurance program by the federal government, by the Federal Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, reinsurance reduced the lowest cost bronze plan by 22%, the lowest cost silver plan by 34%, the lowest cost silver plan, second lowest cost silver plan by 36%, and the lowest cost gold plan by 31%. Reinsurance also kept 66,000 Minnesotans insured that otherwise would not have been. Reinsurance offsets a relatively large share of high-cost claims in the individual market. In other words, reinsurance helps pay for health care for very sick people. Almost two-thirds, 62% of eligible enrollees with reinsurance claims had 2 or more serious health conditions. And according to the 2020 year-end reinsurance report, the top 5 conditions for which reinsurance offset the cost of care were diabetes, asthma, COPD, rheumatoid arthritis, metastatic cancer, and heart arrhythmias. In this sense, it serves a similar purpose to the program run by the Minnesota Comprehensive Health Association from 1976 until 2014. During that time, MCHA provided a state subsidy to offset the cost of providing near-market rate health insurance premiums. We also appreciate that reinsurance is transparent and accountable. It is governed by a state board, MCHA, and regularly audited at the state and federal levels. Again, thank you, Senator Dahms, for carrying this important legislation. We urge the committee to continue this program, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Next up, we'll have Dan Anderson from the Minnesota Council of Health Plans. Please take your seat there, state your name for the record, and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Dan Andreessen with the Minnesota Council of Health Plans, the trade association for Minnesota's nonprofit insurers. Minnesota's reinsurance program was created to lower premiums for people buying insurance on their own by paying a portion of those high-cost medical bills, a cost that otherwise must be billed into premiums. The program helps to protect access to a variety of individual health insurance options in every corner of the state by minimizing the risk of high health care costs. As a result, more insurers have been able to stay in the market. The program has been a resounding success and has resulted in lowering premiums on an average of 20% compared to what premiums would be without the program. The recent actuarial analysis from the Department of Commerce shows the reinsurance program will reduce the average premium cost for enrollees for around $130 per month if continued in 2023. Reducing premiums results in more Minnesotans being able to enroll in plans in the individual market. Analysis of Minnesota's reinsurance program by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services concluded that an additional 89,000 Minnesotans had coverage in 2020 than otherwise would have if premiums were to have not been reduced. Conversely, if reinsurance is not extended, Commerce projects premiums to increase by 25%. And the report that Mr. Reynolds cited from the federal government shows that sometimes that impact could be even more, maybe up to 36%. And that impact of not having reinsurance could lead to as many as 15,000 Minnesotans not having coverage in 2023. An advantage of the program is it doesn't impact an enrollee's healthcare experience. The operation is seamless to the enrollee, and those with high healthcare costs do not have to complete extra paperwork or enroll in a special program. The program has been so successful that 15 other states have enacted reinsurance programs over the past several years, and Congresswoman Angie Craig is a leader on creating a federal reinsurance program. The state's program is administered and audited by the Minnesota Comprehensive Health Association, who ensures the program's money is used appropriately. Financial information is summarized in quarterly and annual reports, which are posted publicly on the association's website. The 2021 fourth quarter report is in your members' packets. High medical costs for over 3,000 enrollees were covered in 2021, including people living with cancer, asthma, arthritis, heart disorders, and autoimmune conditions. The costs associated with this care are otherwise billed into premiums, which are paid by everyone in the individual market. Unfortunately, the cost of medical care continues to increase year after year. A recent Gallup poll found that 30% of respondents did not seek treatment for a healthcare issue because of the prices being charged by providers and drug manufacturers. We urge the legislature to pass this legislation quickly. Minnesota law requires health plans to file products and rates in the coming months for calendar year 2023. And passage of Senate File 3472 will ensure that the benefits from the reinsurance program are a part of those rates. The council thanks Chair Dahms for his leadership on this issue and asks you to continue the reinsurance program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Next, we have Mr. Bob Stein with the Minnesota Association of Health Underwriters. Please take the witness stand and testify or stand, I should say, and state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee members, good afternoon. My name is Bob Stein, and I'm an independent insurance agent serving individual and small employer customers here in the Twin Cities and throughout the state of Minnesota. I'm here today representing the Agents Coalition, which includes 4 professional agent associations in Minnesota, including the Minnesota Association of Health Underwriters, National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors, Professional Insurance Agents, and Minnesota Independent Insurance Agents and Brokers. Collectively, we represent over 54,000 licensed insurance agents throughout Minnesota. Our agents represent 2.25 million Minnesotans covered by the private market, and we work closely with both group and individual market consumers on a daily basis. We strongly support Senate File 3472 to extend the reinsurance program, and we thank Senator Dahms for his authorship of this bill. The individual marketplace is not only where individuals and families get coverage when they do not have access to the employer-sponsored coverage, it's where entrepreneurs get their coverage when they start new businesses, and it's also relied upon individuals between jobs and early retirees. Due to the problems with the ACA was impacted the individual marketplace, carriers were leaving the individual market and consumers, and our clients, your constituents, were getting headline-making double-digit premium increases. Without this program, it was uncertain if any carriers would have chosen to continue offering coverage to this market segment. We supported the creation of this plan, and we are here to report back to you today that the premium security plan that you passed in 2017 is working and needs to be continued and made permanent. When the program was implemented according to the Minnesota Department of Commerce, this plan resulted in a premium being 20% lower in 2018 than without the plan. All the benefits of this program go directly to the consumers as shown through the rate filings of the carriers. In fact, no funding really goes to the bottom line of the insurance carriers since they can only make a claim for actual medical claims and are then reimbursed by the MCHA, the administrator. They cannot receive reimbursements for their overhead, administrative costs. Consumers, your constituents and my clients directly benefit from the lower premiums. Plus please support this bill and help keep the stability of this this vital program in Minnesota. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Members, now we'll go to questions. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if the Assistant Commissioner can possibly come back up and talk a little bit more about the BHP Trust Fund and the costs to MNsure that they lose in the federal funding because we have the reinsurance program. If you can talk about those costs a little bit, that'd be great.
Commissioner Brickety.
Mr. Chair, Senator Port, I can't speak to the specific numbers. I would defer to those agencies to speak for themselves, and I know that they've been working on their fiscal notes as well. I think both of those agencies have operational impacts, as noted earlier. I think the MNsure one certainly is, actually, excuse me, the MNsure operational impacts are paid for in the governor's budget. They were estimated in the governor's budget as just under, I think, $5 million a year. Those numbers may change due to the forecast, and I'll defer to them to speak to the full number, either here or in committee and HHS on Wednesday. And the Minnesota Care impacts, I think, will change a little bit by enrollment, and I would expect them to be shown in full in the fiscal note. I think the total number to date of impacts thus far in the program is approaching somewhere north of $500 million in federal revenue that has been lost, but I would defer to DHS for the precise number, Senator.
Senator Port, follow-up?
Yes, please. Thank you, Assistant Commissioner. That's helpful. If, you know, Chair Dahms, if as going forward, if we can continue to talk about making sure that we're repaying the trust fund and making sure that we're thinking comprehensively about those costs as we move forward, I would really appreciate that and look forward to seeing the fiscal notes as well.
So keep in mind, Senator Port, one thing that last year, and you may recall this, but last year, when we passed out the bill that requested that the Department of Commerce go ahead and apply for the next 5 years, there was also a bill that eliminated the option for the general fund to keep drawing money out of the healthcare access fund. And one of the reasons that was part of that was because if we're taking money from the general fund out of the healthcare access fund, and the healthcare access fund, due to interaction with the health benefits plan, reduces the money in the health benefits plan, we chose not to continue to take it out of the healthcare access fund, so some of that money can be used to offset that. So if you take a look at the balance of the 5 years, I think it's the last 3 years, it would appear to be it's going to be a zero negative balance because of that offset. That may fluctuate a little bit by the offset that we're not going to take out of the general fund anymore. That could offset that a little bit. But yes, when we get the fiscal note and stuff and have a chance to take a look at that, this bill will go through the Health and Human Services stop next, and then it'll go to finances. So I'm sure we'll have plenty of conversations on that there. But thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Senator Dahms. Senator Kent.
Senator Dahms, you know, we heard some testimony talking about, you know, the increase in cost of healthcare, the increase in cost of prescription medication. You know, and I'm so glad to be here as a part of the Commerce Committee, so forgive me, I am a little new to the nitty-gritty of some of these conversations. But what does reinsurance do to actually help lower these costs that are proving to be such a burden for so many? So it's not just those ones.
Senator Dahms.
Well, thank you for the question, Senator Kent. Probably about the same thing any healthcare policy does. I mean, they do, you know, they're always trying to work on ways to get healthcare costs down, but you have to understand that these are the people that pay for the procedures. And so as a group of health insurance carriers, I'm sure that they are working on a lot of things. I'm not privy to all of those things and would certainly not want to lead you to believe that I knew what they were and knew how they're doing them, because that's not the case. But I think we have to focus on what reinsurance does and what the purpose of reinsurance is. It would be just like if you owned a business and you had reinsurance for the high-end liability, and you were asking the reinsurance person what he was doing to drive down the cost of the liability suits that you may have that would be called accidents, or in the insurance industry, their occurrences. And so I really can't tell you much more than that. And that's not my expectations for reinsurance to be doing anything other than what they normally would be doing.
Senator Kent, follow up or nope? With that, I don't see any other questions. Senator Dahms, would you like to move your bill? I believe it's going to HHS.
Mr. Chair, I would move that Senate File 3472 be passed out of Commerce and moved to the Health and Human Services Committee.
With that motion, all those in favor of Senator Dahms' bill passing and being re-referred to Health and Human Services, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
With that, motion carries. Senator Dahms, your bill's on its way. With that, members, we've completed our agenda for the day. The Committee on Commerce and Consumer Protection, Finance, and Policy stands adjourned.